So hi everybody, I'm Salvin, as Ross mentioned, and I'll be talking to you guys about security, and more specifically, now that customers are taking security seriously, how does it affect us? So I just want to mention why I chose this topic a bit. One of the things that it's the new reality for us, right? And I'm sure most of you know that it's actually here to stay. Security is a big thing. If you haven't been affected by it in some way, you probably will be affected by it soon. In my experience, lots of people try to pretend that it doesn't exist and even hope that it will just go away. That ship has pretty much sailed. But what I'd like to actually show people is that it's okay. Right? Security it's one of those things that you have to do, and it's not that bad once you get to it. Just two disclaimers about the talk. In a lot of this talk, I'm illustrating my point of view, particularly in regard to my own and our organization's experience. And I don't want to stand here and lecture people. I'd rather hope that I give people some sort of inspiration and a view into what they haven't seen before. And also to inspire you to do some of the things that I'll be touching on, or have a look at some of the things I'll be touching on. Okay, so security breaches. I'm sure people have heard about these. There's lots of them that happened locally, that happened nationally. And these are some of the recent ones in the past 5 years, I think. On the left, you'll see the international ones, and on the right, some of the South African breaches. And it's not important, the detail, but it just illustrates this stuff's happening all the time. Even if you don't know about it, it's happening. And what does that mean? I mean, it means that people are finding value in stealing data. And another important thing to note is that this is not limited to a specific sector. If you look at some of these, they're across different organizations in different industries, and the data they have is completely different. Another noticeable kind of characteristics, I've highlighted a few there, but one of the noticeable ones in South Africa is that there were activist hacks as well, some of them related to government and the Guptas. Yeah, that's pretty interesting. The other one that was interesting is in December 2015, the US voter database was hacked. If you look at that number, 191 million records, that's pretty much everybody in the US. Just before Trump got elected. Yeah. So I mean, maybe has anybody here had their personal information exposed, or do you know whether your personal information has been exposed? MySpace? Yep. Yep. What have you done about it?
Nice one.
What have you done about it?
I changed my password and also I have a new email account.
Great.
So now I'm safe.
Great. Okay, cool. So, I mean, this relates to the motivation for attackers. What's motivating attackers? That's a copy and paste from Wikipedia. The text not important. What's important is that the profile of an attacker is not as simple as what it used to be. It's not about these guys just trying to do an Uber hack anymore. These people, I mean, the profile is becoming very broad. It's different kind of people doing things with different motivations. They're becoming very patient and calculating, and they're willing to take baby steps. Attackers are using vulnerabilities in ways that haven't been used before. So lots of attackers are chaining vulnerabilities that have been found over long periods of time to perform attacks at certain periods in time. And part of achieving this is that they're not only looking out to stealing data or selling data. It's also about selling information about vulnerabilities, which enables those long-term hacks. Right, so, information security culture. So, what in relation to what we have done in CSG. So, what have we seen in our world? What are our customers doing? How do we treat security internally as a global corporate? What are the impacts on our internal processes? and what are the legislative impacts. So as I said, this is very much in terms of my experience, and I'll be sharing that with you. So what we've seen, we know our customers are taking this seriously now. They're hiring consultants, not only to scan the software that we're providing them, but our pre-sales guys are having to answer detailed security questionnaires regarding known vulnerabilities and our internal practices. Customers and more especially potential customers want to know what well-known frameworks we're working with for secure development. I mean, some of the ones the one that I'll be touching on a little bit is OWASP SAM in the coming slides. Has anybody here heard of OWASP or SAM? Besides Matt. Yeah. So how do we treat security internally in CSG? So I want to touch a little bit on that. So what are we doing? CSG has a focused team all the way up the corporate chain for security. And this team is responsible for influencing and working with each R&D shop in the organization. So CSG is a global organization with many R&D shops around the world. One of the key activities of this team is to actually promote security, apart from pissing everybody else off with the security policies and requirements they keep adding. I'm sure the guys in CSG know about PAM. Each R&D shop in CSG has some sort of secure development lead. This doesn't have to be a person, it can be performed by a group of people as a role, and in my team's case, we perform that role. CSG is invested in lots of organizational training, and as a corporate, we've pushed this training out. It's become compulsory, but that kind of training is not that effective. My team as well has gone for external training. I can remember a few guys have gone to CPUT. There was a course there that was facilitated by a French consultancy. We found that that was really useful. It actually helped to kickstart our journey in this space. And then, sorry, I'm just going to hope this scrolls. So then we found OWASP SAM, right? And just for those of you who don't know what OWASP is, so OWASP means the Open Web Application Security Project, and I'll read out the Wikipedia definition for you. So it's an online community that produces freely available articles, methodologies, documentation, tools, and technologies in the field of web application security. If you want to know more, go and find out. And SAM basically is the Software Assurance Maturity Model. And again, the Wikipedia definition, it's a framework to help organizations assess, formulate, and implement a strategy for software security, which can be integrated into the existing software development lifecycle. So individuals in my team have been driving this process with OWASP SAM, and we've used this to evaluate our internal processes and to see where we can do better, and as well as determine where we are at a point in time. Right? And this has helped us, and it can definitely help you, to give yourself a reference in terms of where you are right now, and it'll enable you to identify how you want to go forward based on what's important to your organization. So lots of things it does is you can go out, take questionnaires to your organization, different people in different roles, and get information back, and then you can outlay that against the framework, which kind of gives you levels of not conformity, but levels of maturity for your organization in terms of security. The next step that we did is, sorry. That's where I was. The next step was to look at our current processes, and what we did is we actually had to rework some of our policies to better align with the model that we had. CSG is a very broad company, and a lot of the company was basing its policies on software delivered as a service. Whereas in Cape Town, what we do is we deliver software in a license model. So we found that this the policies around software as a service didn't really line up with the license model that we had, and we had to rework some of those policies. And then the process of evaluation with OWASP SAM is not a once-off activity. It's something that we do on an ongoing basis. An important phrase to remember is security is never static. And it's something that you have to keep in mind at all times, and it will keep changing. As soon as we build new stuff to protect ourselves, somebody will find a way to get around it. I tried to find a cool quote to illustrate this. There's one by Mitch Ratcliffe. A computer lets you make more mistakes faster than any invention in human history, with the possible exception of handguns and tequila. Cool. So, what did this mean for us in terms of security and software development? So, in software development, there are generally things that you should be aware of and practice. This list that I have up here is not extensive, but these are things that I feel are quite important, particularly from our own experience. So, taking it from the top, being secure by design. More and more it is apparent that security cannot be an afterthought. Just as privilege and access control mechanisms need to be built into your software from the outset, from the architectural inception stages, so does the notion of secure development practices and threat models that enable you to ensure you are taking the security of your running application seriously. Teams need to focus on security. It doesn't mean it's a developer's job. In our case, we have Scrum teams, therefore we try to have collective ownership. This is definitely a work in progress, but we're still at the beginning of this journey, and we're doing a lot of analysis and strategic thinking to determine how we take this forward. The different disciplines like analysis and test must also be security aware. Both these disciplines have a key role to play in ensuring that robust software is delivered. Individuals in these spaces should ask themselves, how can I champion secure development in my space and be able to justify to themselves why it's important? Somebody give you a thumbs up. Sorry. So the next important thing that we found was actually being proactive about security support. The starting point here is your policies. If it isn't explicit about how you deal with security in support and in other areas, it can become quite dangerous. Remember, unlike bugs in software functionality, security vulnerabilities can have severe consequences in terms of reputational damage as well as legislative penalties. This doesn't mean that you must fix every security issue that you find as fast as you can. It means you need to be ethical and responsible, and key people in your organization must take responsibility for decisions that are risky for the organization. And lastly, but not the least, customer perspective, right? So this segues in from the previous point. So teams must be aware of the potential reputational damage that can be incurred because of pure secure development practices. Because this doesn't only have an impact on them, but everybody else in the organization. Also, it's become apparent, looking at all major security breaches, that legislators and customers care more about a vendor being ethical and responsible more than they would have us fix every vulnerability. So this is like made really clear in the congressional investigations into Facebook and other organizations. Equifax was the other example. It was more about being ethical and responsible than actually fixing everything you had. I mean, sometimes it's enough just to inform a customer about a vulnerability, even if you're not fixing it. What that does is it allows the customer to actually take action in order to mitigate any of the issues around the vulnerabilities for themselves. Okay, so the next item that we looked at was legal issues and global regulation. So I'm sure many of you have heard of GDPR and POPI. So if you haven't, good luck to you. And I've mentioned legislation a few times, but in terms of most of OSCE, these are the two that'll basically be most relevant. So GDPR has been really big in this year. It's come into effect in May, and what GDPR stands for, if those of you who don't know, it's the General Data Protection Regulation from the EU, and it's really well defined and very specific in many ways. The significant aspect about GDPR is that it has defined penalties that relate to the revenue of organizations. And as a software vendor, we need to be aware that our secure development practices, or lack thereof, can actually affect the profitability of our customers and potentially even our own organizations based on GDPR. Excuse me. In South Africa, we have the POPI Act, which is the Protection of Personal Information Act. It's actually intended to come into full effect in 2019, but certain aspects of it have been in effect since 2014. The aspects of it that are coming into effect are those around the compliance, which is why most people don't respect it. And this is something that is going to affect us all, not just as organizations, but as individuals, because your data is also protected by this legislation. In terms of us at CSG, we have spent lots of hours evaluating our software and processes against the requirements of GDPR, including training and workshops and lots of other stuff. The other big activity that we're doing, and it may be worthwhile for lots of organizations to do this, is we're auditing our internal environments, as well as building a framework to ensure that at a corporate legal level we are able to make sure that we are compliant. Okay, so step away from what we learned. And one thing that I thought was really cool that we discovered during this process, speaking a common language, not just important in testing. One of the tools we discovered, one thing that I found personally, especially when talking about security vulnerabilities, is that it's very easy to get yourself into a situation where you're having circular discussions, especially with different individuals that have different focuses. People come at security vulnerabilities from different angles, and quite often they're thinking about it from their angle and they're not seeing your point of view. And this is why it's really important to find an effective way to communicate, not just to development teams, but to all stakeholders like product managers and customers. So our work with OWASP-SAM actually led us to discover a tool. So this is just a snapshot of the website, called CVSS, which is the Common Vulnerability Scoring System. So what's really cool about it is it breaks down a vulnerability into quite a few different, into the different relevant metrics, so that you can actually isolate different things, and when you speak about a vulnerability, you speak about it in terms of that scoring and along those lines. Even within our development teams, I've seen how valuable this could be. So looking ahead, this is my point of view. So going forward, so in the coming years, 5 years from today, delivery teams are going to have to be more security conscious in all disciplines, right? And what does this mean for us in the testing community? So this is what I believe we should be doing eventually, right? And in my mind, this is my vision. So we need to focus more on security, more focus on security vulnerabilities and penetration testing. So think about your threat models and all of those sorts of things. Those sorts of things we need to upskill ourselves on those things. One thing we found is that attack simulation is something we need lots of upskilling in. Changing the way that we think so that we can build effective threat models will help this. There are opportunities here not only to improve in the space, but this is a space where we can build very valuable automation suites. There are also lots of tools out there that help you with testing and discovering vulnerabilities in terms of security. So some of the ones that are quite common are Wireshark, Fiddler, OWASP, Zap, the Kali tools. There's quite a few others. So has anybody heard of any of these tools, right? Fiddler. Right. Yeah, so I mean these things are well documented. There's lots of information available, and then I've added some of the links into my slides. Into the resource slides. And lastly, our mindset must be enhanced to treat security as a first-class citizen. Vulnerability should be seen as just another kind of defect and fit into our processes and policies as such. To paraphrase, winter is coming. Legislation, security, and privacy-aware customers, and awareness of ethical behavior of organizations, coupled with the bad actors' increased desire, organization, and readily available tool sets, will make it dangerous to continue to treat secure development as an afterthought. So this is becoming a very organized industry. I don't know if any of you know of the dark web and all of those sorts of things. Who's heard of the dark web? Yeah. So I mean, this is becoming really, really important. Yep. Cool. So that's me, guys. So what I've also done is I've added those links to the tools there. One thing that we found really useful is we also have subscription to some learning resources, and the one that I actually found really useful was a course from Pluralsight called Hack Yourself First. I don't know how great the free one is, but there is a free version of it. But it was really useful. And then now that we've moved on to lynda.com, we've also found that there's quite a few testing learning courses on there. One of the guys on my team evaluated the penetration testing, advanced web testing, and found it was really cool. Cool. That's me. Any questions?
Yes. Burning to ask. So you're talking about security. I know with the Copy Act that's coming in, automatically companies will be forced to adhere to a certain
law, right?
to a certain extent.
Yep.
But you just spoke about your company and the fact that you've actually got a sort of dedicated team that is taking care of the security aspect of things. For a smaller company that doesn't have that space